So Fallout 76's release is upon us. If you guys haven't seen the news, for some reason, at least on PC, the servers seem to be live for almost everyone. I actually don't know of anyone that hasn't been able to play the game yet. No trickery with VPNs required. For consoles, it's a little bit of a different story. But either way, in this video, what I want to show you are 10, features that the game never really tells you about. Or if it does, it's so subtle that you may have not known this is something you can do. These ranging for ways to keep your carry weight down, or even just to make your character a little bit more powerful. If you guys do enjoy the content, you can leave a like or subscribe. At 350,000 subscribers, I will be doing a cooking video with the Fallout cookbook. One of the first things that I think is particularly interesting is you could actually stack mutations in this game. That meaning that you can have several mutations at the same time. How many you can have at once isn't totally clear. I've seen several images of people with 2. Many people report that they've had up to 7. I think that's probably fake because it seems like after getting one mutation, getting a second one is significantly less likely. I wouldn't be shocked if that scales with each additional mutation, but it seems like the functionality is definitely there. If you watched my other video on mutations, which you could find linked in little I, you'll see that some of these mutations have a really natural complement. Having both of them at the same time would make your character extremely powerful and probably make the game a lot of fun. But speaking of mutations, during my playthrough I got several of these, and I was consistently trying to get the perk card Starch Genes. This allows you to actually save those mutations and not remove them with rad removing chems. Despite putting 11 points into luck, I couldn't figure out as to why I wasn't getting that perk card. Well, it turns out all the perk cards, or pretty much all the perk cards in Fallout 76, have a level requirement. This might be something the game tells you, but I didn't know about it, and talking to many other people, they didn't know about it. So basically, it seems like every single perk card has a level assigned to it. Starch Genes, for example, is a level 30 perk card. So for me at least, the second I turned level 30, anytime I picked luck, I had the option to take that perk card. There was no chance associated with it. And then the same thing at level 31, that perk card was there again, so I could get the level 2 right away. There's actually a great website for speccing out your character and picking some of these perk cards. It has a lot of the levels listed. I'll have a link to this down below, but basically if you're trying to find a specific perk card, just know that you have to be the required level to actually gain access to it. There might be a mechanic where unlocking a perk card pack might give it to you early, but otherwise, based on my experience, after you hit the level requirement, you have a 100% chance of seeing that perk card. But again, take that with a grain of salt, that's just my experience thus far. So it seems like across all of the aid items in Fallout 76, there's certain consistencies. 2 I'm going to point out are all of the food items in the game seem to take 25 seconds to apply, while all of the water items seem to take only 10 seconds to apply. So obviously, if you're trying to figure out what to heal with in a pinch, having those water items queued up would be particularly valuable. This could be really useful information when trying to assign some of your various hotkeys. Only use your water items to heal yourself when you really need them in place of like a stim pack. While the food items, they take longer, you could use them after the combat is over. You'll probably notice when you're building in Fallout 76, a lot of stuff needs plans. Some of these plans can get to be very expensive, such as like the power armor crafting station at 1,200 caps from the Enclave. Well, something I found out is after somebody purchases that plan, they could actually build that item at their friend's workshop. So in order to build at a friend's workshop, you actually have to be in the same squad. But more or less, I was playing with somebody on my team who spent the caps to actually buy the power armor crafting station plan. They subsequently built it at my camp, and it gave me that as now a stored item that I could place down anytime I place my camp down again. So of course there is a cost associated with this of whatever materials you need to actually craft that thing. But let's just say hypothetically you and all your friends want the power armor crafting station, you just need one of you to buy it and to place it down at all 4 workshops. So tons of people are having carry weight and stash weight issues with Fallout 76. As of right now in the live version of the game, nothing has really been changed in that regard. It still seems like the stash weight is at 400, even though Bethesda said they were looking into raising it. Well, one thing that actually might be contributing to your issues here is when you go to your stash, you have the option to store all of your junk. What actually happens here is your junk isn't scrapped in the process. So like when you pick up, let's say, an aluminum can and actually have that in your inventory, it weighs more than when you actually go to a crafting table and scrap that to its raw junk. So when you just store everything in your stash box, it just stores it as its non-scrapped variant. So for me, I took all the scrap out of my stash box, went to a crafting table and scrapped it all down to its raw components. This ended up saving me 20 pounds of weight in my stash. As a little bonus, another thing the game doesn't really tell you, you could actually store power armor pieces within a power armor frame. So when you pick pick up that power armor frame, it'll always weigh 10 pounds no matter how many items or armor pieces are within it. But again, this has to be individual power armor pieces. It's not like you could start storing other things like weapons in there. Something important to keep in mind that maybe you noticed while scrapping weapons in this game, you actually can't take off their weapon mods. So like let's say there's a gun you have that's a particularly cool scope and you're like, oh, I want that. If you try and switch it back down to iron sights, that's not going to give you your scope back, you're just going to lose it. And even beyond that, scrapping things is just going to delete all those mods altogether. I bet a bunch of you guys actually noticed this already, but it's important to keep in mind because this differs from how it worked in Fallout 4. So a lot of people are pretty confused as to why all of a sudden their nuke launch codes were gone. Well, basically, this is an intended feature. It happened on one of the last play sessions for the beta, and more or less what's going on here is the nuke launch codes expire on a weekly basis. A Bethesda employee actually responded to a thread on the Bethesda forums where people were questioning this, and he did affirm that it is meant to happen. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that thread was deleted, so I can't actually show you a screenshot of it, but while I was preparing for this video, I did see it with my own eyes, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But as of right now, what I've heard are two opposing theories. One, that nuke launch codes expire on Tuesdays, but then also that nuke launch codes just last a week from when you found them. I don't really know which one's going to be true. Obviously with the beta, it's hard to gauge because you didn't get to play every day or all the time, but just keep in mind, when you find a nuke launch code, you have to use it pretty quickly or it's going to go away. But nuclear keycards do not degrade. Unlike Fallout 4, also, critical hits in Fallout 76 do not give you a 100% chance of hitting. So in Fallout 4, you would store your criticals to try and land like maybe a really lucky headshot from far away. In Fallout 76, it doesn't work like that. You have to actually land the shot to get your critical to go off. The critical doesn't guarantee you're going to land your shot. Although, let's say you do activate your critical, shoot them, and miss, the critical hit won't be wasted. It'll actually be saved, and the next shot you do land will be a critical hit. I know there's a lot of confusion about how these actually worked, and I was using this a ton while fighting Scorched Beasts and other high-level enemies. And what I found, it works best when you just use it on like your one high-powered weapon. A lot of people loved listening to the radio in Fallout 76. I can't do that because I don't like copyright claims, but one thing that is pretty cool is the radios in this are actually synced. So let's say you're playing with a group of friends all tuned into the Appalachian radio. It's all going to be playing the same song at the same time. And then last but not least, we do have the big mystery of the verdant season. So if you walked in and out of the forest or even some of the other regions like the Savage Divide, I saw it also, you'll notice in the left corner of your screen it actually says the verdant season is either going on or maybe is ending. What does that actually mean? Originally, I thought it meant that this game might actually have seasons, like there'd be snow and different weather types, but I don't think that's the case, unfortunately. I wasn't able to find an explicit answer from Bethesda themselves or even the game files as to what this is doing, but based off user reports, it seems like it leads to more wildlife being in that region, like radstags and things along those lines, but also the plants are going to grow more and replenish faster. It's like, let's say you find a bunch of cranberries, the rate at which those cranberries respawn and maybe how many appear in a bunch are going to be higher during the verdant season. So yeah, those are 10 features the game never really tells you about. Like they're normally put in your face, you probably know they exist, but it doesn't always give you the extent to what they're affecting or how they actually work on the back end. Hopefully you guys found this video informative. Hopefully a lot of you guys are getting to play the game shortly. If you're in the US and playing on PC, I would definitely check to see if you could play. I just could. I don't really know why, if it was a bug intentional, but it's working. Apparently on Xbox and PS4 it's still restricted. But before we end things off, I actually do want to share today's psychology fun fact of the day. What this one's going to be about is research in psychology. So something very important to keep in mind is most research in psychology, and honestly just in general, is done at a nomothetic level. What that means is it is taking a bunch of people, like a group, and evaluating certain common characteristics that exist among them. This follows for a number of different things. On the more light side, you do have like personality factors. Nomothetic or group level research shows that people who have parents that never get married tend to also not get married. Marriage is thought to be one of those things with a particularly high heritability rate, meaning that there's largely a genetic component there. Or on the flip side, for the more violent offenders, looking at long-term and very violent criminals out there, one thing they tend to show is kind of violent behavior or maladaptive behavior at a younger age. Like typically around age 3, 4, or 5, they'll start being mean to other kids, don't develop interpersonal relationships, and thus many people in that category go on to be criminals. Now the important part about this is both of those are nomothetic factors. But oftentimes when you read a certain psych study, you might be like, oh, my parents didn't get married. Well, what you're doing is taking nomothetic or group data and applying it to an individual, which is known as idiographic data. Most of the time this is okay, but it can be a dangerous thing to do, and it's something to always keep in mind. Just because your kid is maybe acting out at a young age doesn't mean he's going to be a bad person in life, because that was done at a group level, and what you're doing is looking at group data and trying to apply it to an individual. With individuals, there's typically a lot of other outside factors to keep in mind, and really the point I'm trying to make here is I feel like I often see it where people will put way too much emphasis on what a study showed, while in reality there's a big discrepancy when applying that study to an individual person. Either way though, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this one. But with that, I hope to see you guys all next time. Later.